Hi friends, it's Droolbatz. I hope that your day is going swimmingly. Today I'm going to be discussing the 2018 horror movie All Light Will End. I'm going to be discussing this movie based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally, how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. A scary new horror novel called All Light Will End has taken the world by storm. It is one of the #1 bestsellers, and even Stephen King in this movie has endorsed the book, saying it chilled him to his very core. Its author is a young woman named Savannah, and she goes on a radio show to talk about this book. Some of the radio hosts are like, wow, your book is so great. Did having a mother who was also a horror writer inspire you? And she said, actually, my night terrors are kind of what inspired me, what gave me the idea for the book. After this little radio show, Savannah goes out with her friends. They're going to her little brother's graduation ceremony, and her family owns a little cabin outside of the small town where her brother is graduating. So she and her boyfriend and two of their other friends, who are also a couple, are going to go hang out there. Once they're at the cabin and Savannah's little brother has joined them, the group decides to make a campfire outside and tell some scary stories. Savannah, surprisingly, does not want to participate, even though she is great at telling scary stories, obviously. Her brother instead tells a story about how when he was young, he was out with his father and I don't remember what they were doing, but they were driving by a cornfield and he saw the most terrifying sight. It was this figure, creature, something cloaked in black that was lurking with just this terrible presence in this cornfield. And he was very scared, and then his dad told him it was a scarecrow, and everyone kind of laughs at his expense. However, Savannah is very freaked out and does not enjoy listening to this story, so she leaves. Why is Savannah so afraid of the story her little brother told? You'll have to watch to find out. All Light Will End is 84 minutes long, so it's kind of on the shorter end of a feature-length movie. However, it's a slow burn, and this movie is more about the atmosphere than the actual action, so I found that the movie felt quite long, even though it's not really that long. This movie was very interesting visually. I found that a lot of the framing was kind of traditional, I guess you could say. It kind of used a lot of sequences that kind of harken back to familiar tropes, like in a dream sequence we see Savannah running down a hallway and we see it slowly pan across to something standing at the end of the hallway. There were a lot of very traditional imagery that I think you'll recognize if you've watched literally any horror movie. It gave the movie a very knowledgeable feeling, like, you know, it knew what it was doing by referencing other movies of the sort. However, by contrast, the movie also had really weird lighting. A lot of the scenes, almost all the outdoors scenes, and then quite a few scenes that were set indoors during the day, had just really harsh artificial lighting that really washed out the whole scene. There are a couple sequences at a police station where the police officer is like investigating some local troublemakers about something, and you could barely see them. They were just so washed out, and later on he gets called out to another call and they're driving a white pickup truck, and it was just so washed out you couldn't even see the background behind the pickup. I thought it was really strange, and it gave a very cheap feeling to those scenes. This movie had very traditional music and sound effects, very, you know, the creeping type of music that's very common. I think going avant-garde would have been a bad move here, so I actually appreciated that. I'm always a fan of traditional music. And one thing that also really impressed me about this movie was its sound mixing was very solid. A lot of this movie is very quiet as Savannah is spending her time kind of in deep thought or reflection. And even when she's speaking in a very low tone, she's very clear. It's easy to hear her without compromising the volume of what's going on. Of course, you can't have a movie without actors, and The actors were also a mixed bag. The girl playing Savannah I thought was really good. Savannah was a very specific type of character. She's kind of lost in thought a lot of the time, and while her friends are kind of having a lighthearted time, she's clearly got something bothering her that she's thinking about. She's kind of like the deep character, and I thought her actress did a really great job of reflecting that. Savannah was just a really solid character, and her acting was well done. By contrast, the other actors were not. They didn't have any chemistry, and none of them had real chemistry with Savannah herself. All of the dialogue felt incredibly performative and fake. There were some conversations that I think easily could have been ad-libbed and they would have felt much more natural, but you could tell that even they were scripted, talking about, you know, oh hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good. And it felt very stilted. Because most of the movie is Savannah kind of on her own trying to deal with the mystery that's haunting her, and stuff like that. I think because she was a strong actor, that bolstered the movie, but again, almost all the other actors were just really bad in these roles. There were elements of the production value that were really solid. Again, I thought the sound mixing was great. I was impressed by the expansive set they had. You really saw them moving through the cabin and the countryside and everything like that. But the acting was poor. In many important sequences, the lighting was really strange, and it just kind of caught me off guard, this mixed bag. Now I'm going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I am going to be spoiling this movie, so if you would like to avoid spoilers, please take this as your cue to leave now. It was lovely having you. Savannah's mother, who was the horror novelist, passed away pretty recently, I guess. So one thing that seems to be bothering Savannah a little bit is that even though she's written this absolutely incredibly scary, stand-on-its-own horror novel, people keep comparing her to her mother. Inside, Savannah turns around and someone has written "liar" on the mirror of the bathroom while she was taking a shower. She thinks it might have been her friend's boyfriend, and she's kind of freaked out. He claims it wasn't him though, but he tells her, you know, I went inside the master bedroom, which everyone told him don't go in there because the dad doesn't like people messing with stuff, but he went in there anyway. And he said, and I saw something. I know the jig is up. Ooh. Savannah eventually rejoins her friends, and they wonder where the boyfriend went. Her gal pal thinks that perhaps the boyfriend went out for a late night jog, which everyone says is very dangerous, so don't do that, guys. But anyway, they think that's what he's done. When they find out that he still hasn't come back in the morning, they all go out looking for him. The girlfriend starts to get really paranoid, and she accuses Savannah of sleeping with her man, and Savannah's like, no, I didn't. And then the boyfriend turns up dead in the woods. And it turns out that Savannah's night terrors have actually been caused by this scary creature, this thing in this long dark cloak with like what looks like a long skeleton for a head, maybe a horse skeleton or a horse skull, I mean, something like that, that's been haunting her. And what actually happened is her mother, when she was young, summoned a demon and continued to summon this demon and let it possess Savannah to kind of study it and really get that feeling of terror. And these night terrors Savannah has been experiencing are the creature coming back to try to get back inside her. In a fit of rage when she was fighting with her mom about being an author or whatever, the demon came out and killed the mom. And finally it's revealed that Savannah killed the boyfriend, and because the boyfriend discovered that she did that, and she ends up killing everybody and unites with the demon and walks off into the woods in a creepy fashion and puts this creepy skull and cloak on. And so you have to wonder, was it her the whole time? Ooh. If that felt really convoluted, sorry, I thought it was convoluted too. So this movie is definitely a psychological slow burn type of a film, very focused on the atmosphere of the film. It's very ambient. It's got this kind of slow, quiet foreboding that goes on throughout the movie. Now there are a lot of movies like that. There are also a lot of movies with the premise of someone who is being haunted by something they don't really understand. One that comes to mind for me specifically is a movie called The Blackcoat's Daughter. This movie is extremely mood-based. It's very much a slow burn about this girl who seems to start slowly going insane. This movie kind of reminds me of The Blackcoat's Daughter in its ambiance and kind of that focus on like the memories and kind of how they're emerging. However, The Blackcoat's Daughter did a significantly better job of kind of showing the girl evolving as this happens, kind of devolving into the fear, the panic, and eventually the possession. Whereas this movie, it foreshadows some things, but it kind of happens that Savannah just suddenly gets possessed and on the run and being crazy like in an instant. There's not really that tense buildup. There's definitely foreshadowing with her night terrors, but there's just not that really important buildup that I think needed to happen. It wasn't very linear. This movie felt very disjointed in many ways. It jumps back and forth between the past and the present, which is not inherently bad in and of itself. However, I think it took away the movie's ability to show Savannah's character kind of, you know, moving down this linear path, slowly slipping into madness or what have you. One thing too that was very similar between The Blackcoat's Daughter and All Light Will End is towards the end, there's a scene in The Blackcoat's Daughter where the girl who's like being haunted and possessed, she finally like fully, I guess, is engulfed or perhaps fully embraces the presence, and you know, she murders someone and the cops walk in on this scene and you can just see her being like the girl is gone and just the creature is present. This movie had something similar where, you know, the friends walk up and they see Savannah like with blood all on her, being all creepy and stuff. However, The Blackcoat's Daughter had a lot more significant foreshadowing of that moment, both visually as well as some older girl kind of messing with her, telling her like, oh, someone murdered people in the basement, so then that's what she does. Which not everything needs foreshadowing, I suppose, but The Blackcoat's Daughter really felt like it came full circle. There weren't really any loose strings left hanging, in my opinion. This movie, it just felt like it kind of came out of the blue. There's a sequence at the end where she, you know, she's there covered in blood and it's all creepy and whoa, and then it turns out her dad is a police officer, and so when he hears that there's some commotion, he shows up at their cabin, and instead of being outside at the crime scene, Savannah's inside and she's covered in blood, like, hey, or whatever, and so he's like, and just leaves, and he just leaves her. And then she gets up and walks into the woods at night, covered in blood, and it's all creepy, and there are these candles lit in the woods, and she sees like her mother is laying there in this black cloak with the skull on, and Savannah puts the skull on and the cloak. It's sort of like she's becoming one with that entity. However, because we know her mom is not physically there, her mom died a couple years ago, it makes you wonder if it's all in her mind, especially the fact that when she murdered the guy, it was like morning, it was early morning, and then when her dad shows up, it's probably mid-morning at latest, and then this is happening at night. So it's like, did she just sit in blood in the house for multiple hours waiting for darkness, or was this all in her mind? I think it took what could have been a very solid ending, and then for the sake of making cool imagery, convoluted it. If she had done that during the day, it wouldn't have been as scary, but because the timeline would have matched up, I probably wouldn't even be questioning, and I would have said, oh, like her mother being there it's a metaphor, she's not really there, she's not seeing her, it's just a metaphor, blah blah blah. But it just didn't really have the firmness that The Blackcoat's Daughter had as far as showing what the girl was feeling when she ended up in that kind of completely possessed state, if that makes sense. This movie was very disjointed compared to a lot of similar movies that have a similar premise and a similar tone to them. This movie just had a lot that kind of disconnected and just didn't match up. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 2 out of 5 stars. In some ways, the production value really did warrant some praise, and I definitely think the imagery of the creepy thing and the black cloak and the horse skull or whatever it was very cool. However, the bad acting just really killed it for me, and the rest of the movie was pretty disjointed as well, and it just didn't really lead to kind of a satisfying payoff in the end, so I really don't feel I can give it much of a higher score than that. I would love to hear if you agree with me, or if you disagree, please let me know. As I was thinking about this movie, as I was watching it, and as I've been thinking about it afterwards, I was just reflecting on the fact that in most movies, while someone is being haunted, we don't always see what is haunting them. We usually see them thinking something's there, but we don't see it because the audience is supposed to be left wondering. In this movie, they did show us this creepy thing with the skull, and I thought that was an interesting choice, and I did think it was cool to kind of see like a tangible monster to kind of, you know, put the face to the fear, so to say. I'm kind of curious, do you like that approach? Have you seen this before? I thought it was pretty uncommon for this type of movie, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is the coolest creepy dream monster you have ever seen, if you've seen one in a movie? Anyway, enough chattering. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this review was interesting to you, and I hope it was helpful for you. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye!